Hey, gang, how's this for timely, right? I kind of wanted to hear what Benoit had to say first, and I kind of wanted to see what this latest ISC was going to be, and now I'm kind of glad I did. This latest ISC was not quite as informative as I was hoping it was going to be, but now with some context from that SCL and Chris's letter from the chairman, I feel like we can take a more realistic, informed view of what's being offered up for January. So if that sounds good, let's get this. So I'll start with kind of an overview, or I guess revision of my expectations for the year based off of this newest info. The big takeaway was that CIG has decided that now is the time to take a little step back and hammer out some of the long-standing bugs that have long plagued this project. Things like elevators, ship spawning stability, those kinds of things, little things. That's all going to come at the cost of content. Now, there was some confusion over what was meant by content, and Disco Lando cleared that, Jared Huckabee cleared that up a bit on Twitter, and no, I will not be calling it X. So Disco said that by content, they were mostly talking about the new loops, new features like that, things that would take engineers, in other words. This makes a lot of sense, but I'll get into that a bit later. Basically, we'll still be getting our ships, ship sales, probably new guns and suits, new events, and better stability and playability, hopefully. But things like new medical gameplay, engineering, bounty hunting, new UI improvements, those org tools, crafting, base building, that sort of thing, you get the idea. Those things, they just got shoved down the priority list. I've heard from some people that this is a dumb time to do this because more loops and tech and features will be introduced, and those new features will just break all this stuff again. And while that's true, at least CIG would know that it's the new code that caused it and not some leftover remnant from CryEngine like eyeball wetness or Eglon's wildcard lines. You get the idea that this is a 10-year-old program at this point, and there is a lot of legacy code. If CIG can clean up that old stuff, then they only need to really worry about the latest code they put in and not a wild goose chase through the code of yore. The good thing about the January report is that all of this was implemented in December, apparently. So we should be seeing the first sprouts of these results in this month's content. So did we? Well, so this is the sort of thing I expect to both benefit and be harmed by the new cadence. AI should start having some elbow room to function, as it should with more focus on stability, server stability. And it'll be a bit stunted because the engineers that work on this sort of thing are going to largely be pulled away from AI content and onto making those servers more stable, would be my guess, or making old AI features that are breaking, make them work again. That's kind of honestly the theme for this report, and I'll mention the groups that I think will be hurt or helped as I move through this, and I use that term real loosely because I do agree with this move by CIG. Still, there's some cool stuff here, but I'm not sure how quickly we'll actually see it for the reasons I just mentioned. They did work on a tool that will allow for better dialogue, but I'm not sure if that's dialogue with players or like the wildcard lines that we've been starting to hear the NPCs use kind of in the background, like them talking to each other. So I guess we'll find out as time goes on. Also, they're beginning to work on making air traffic control for each landing zone unique to their location. Note that these are major landing zones, so think New Babbage, Lorville, Orson, that sort of place. Not like HDMS Hadley, for example. The report says it's coming soon, but I guess that depends on how much the AI coders are needed to fix things like train paths. Bug fixes and creatures. That's the takeaway for this section. They mostly focused on the sandworm's behavior, the Valakar, which it will be pretty amazeballs experience when that monster drops in the game. And those who have followed this channel for any length of time know that amazeballs isn't a word I use lightly. They mentioned that they're trying to fix up grenades, which, yeah, pretty badly needed. I'm not sure if they fall on the list of long-term issues that CIG is prioritizing, but I know I don't think I wouldn't say I've never used a grenade, but I very rarely use grenades because of how unpredictable they are when you throw them. Finally, they mentioned that this team is also working on Squadron, and I guess this is as good a time as any to say, again, that Squadron will take priority this year over everything else, even Benoit's Joker cards. Just keep that in mind. Like, anytime that I mention any of these things, they take a backseat to Squadron getting out the door in quote-unquote 2026, which I think will be Q1 of 2026, if I had to guess. So this team called GID, which I guess saves them a few syllables because Game Intelligence Development Team, honestly, it's kind of a mouthful. And this team appears to be working on some of the big background tools that other teams use to create the scripts and run the game. Again, I'm not sure if this is one of those teams that is the priority, that is working on something that is stabilizing the game and thus can pull other devs off of whatever they're doing to work with them, or if their work would be put on ice or slowed down in favor of stability. It seems like this one would be the former, though. So these guys would actually be the priority. So this one's a little bit easier to figure out, as it sure sounds like the AI tech team is one of those focus teams, one of the teams that's going to be made a priority during the stabilization and bug fixing kick. They're working on pathfinding scripts for the AI, using the thing that the GID team is making. So actually, yeah, I guess that is a priority. So answered that one, didn't I? And they wrapped up this section by mentioning that they're working on getting AI components to synchronize with server meshing. And that is huge. You'll notice a theme here. Art teams, like those that are making ships, animators, the lore team, voice actors, that sort of thing, I would expect those will be the teams least impacted by this change in process. So they worked on Copion, the sandworm, facial animations, and worked with the AI team for better social interactions with NPCs. And they worked with the AI team on animations for, this is interesting, spec ops, which will make combat more challenging. So look out for that. I do think we'll start seeing a little more variety with NPCs, both in combat and otherwise, moving forward. But again, that might not be a priority over things like, I don't know, like trains working at starting locations. This is largely what I'm talking about. Generally in a project like this, even when it's going balls out on stability and performance fixes, art and writing will always tend to get ahead of programming that governs it, unless it's built on an existing engine, I suppose. But anyways, this is the kind of stuff I expect to continue pretty much unabated this year. They worked on more clothing, which is good for my Starby loving butt. Stealth armor, and yeah, combined with that spec ops bit, sounds like we're going to be starting to see some enemies that are elite in the nearest future, servers and AI allowing, of course. A new backpack and a creature variant, which I think is called the Tarok or something like that. It's kind of like a bull equivalent to the Quasi-Grazer, the space cow. I think that's what it is, but who knows? Maybe they're rolling out the variants to the space worm already, or the sandworm. And they looked at new paint schemes for armor, so honestly, fingers crossed it's not more pink, green, and purple, because seriously, CIG, give that palette a rest. This is also a group that exists. I would suspect this group will benefit the most from the new focus, but that also means that the devs on this team will be dragged into fixing old, boring assets rather than working on new, exciting ones. So lots of debugging, improving investigations, and so on. Transit and hangars were mentioned, so yeah, I'd expect that of all the teams, this one probably has the most Joker cards it can pull on other teams to get things working. Been a while since we've really heard anything on this one, and I recently heard but haven't confirmed that Tony Z is actually gone from CIG, but it does sound like they're kind of going with the faked economy for now, which I'm honestly fine with, at least as a short-term solution. They're mostly focused on Pyro at the moment, which makes sense, just trying to bake in prices and commodities so they make sense with a given location and give people a reason to take the risk of going to Pyro to run cargo and trade in the first place. This group also wouldn't be as impacted by the shift in focus, I wouldn't think. CIG needs to bring in money, even if they're not releasing new loops. And outside of ship sales, this is the team that's probably most involved with making events and making them interesting. Are they succeeding? Well, kind of. I was hoping the Fight for Pyro event would offer up more options to team up, but the missions were enforced solo missions and unshareable. So in my opinion, that's kind of a whiff by CIG, but we'll see what we get as the year goes on. CIG will be leaning on the narrative team pretty hard this year, I think. If they're not going to be rolling out new loops, they're going to need something else to keep the community engaged. And that means we're probably getting a lot of events this year, which will be constructed by the mission team and this gang. But beyond that, the narrative team is working on breathing life into some of the verse. And they're increasing the number of NPCs we can actually interact with. Again, one of my hopes is that we start getting bartenders or maybe certain shop owners that will have rumors. Sometimes those rumors will pan out, sometimes they won't. Beyond that, they're also working on bugs with missing mission text, which, yeah, that has been a problem in 4.0 and other patches. Is this a new one? This feels like a new one to me. Sounds like this is the Live Tools team, and they're at least partially based out of Montreal. Anyways, they're working on the mission refactor, which again should factor pretty large this year. I'd assume it's one of the priorities outside of clearing out code rot. Interesting bits in here is that they're going to be working on the roadmap, which, well, okay, I was going to be making an announcement that the Sprint Watch would probably be going on ice while they had this backlog focus, but it looks like they're going to keep rolling that out. So I guess I'm still going to be doing Sprint Watches, but we'll see what's actually on them. I'm guessing the real meat moving forward, at least through this year, will probably be these monthly reports though. So this is the first of those shows. If the sprints are still looking good, if I think the roadmaps are still informative, I'll continue to do the roadmap or the Sprint Watch. R&D is doing a lot of stuff with the new planet tech, making it look prettier, more realistic, adding in rain, fog, shadow casting, that sort of thing. If you've had a chance to visit the planets and moons of Pyro, you'll get a sense for where this tech is going. It's pretty impressive stuff. Finally, VFX worked on the VFX for the Misfortune primarily, according to this, which I still think is one of the best names for a ship so far, just because of the play on words. They also mentioned a big push on a previous location work that wasn't ready for 4.0. That kind of sounds like a location we haven't seen yet. Or maybe it's just the tech debt on the locations that we already have for Pyro. Not totally sure on that. I would lean towards the latter, that it's something we have right now that they're just going to be cleaning up rather than something new they haven't shown us yet at all. This isn't on the VFX team, but I have to admit I was a little disappointed that all of the Pyro stations have the exact same layout. I'm not sure if that's just a stopgap or just how it's going to be. I'm really hoping for the former though. Don't get me wrong, it's a good template, but you'd expect a hair more variety with those stations. And that's it for this one, y'all. I hope things are going well for you. Catch me next time.